अस्सलाम वालेकुम एंड वेलकम टू करंट ट्यूटोरियल्स। अच्छा, आइल्स एकेडमिक के सेशन में आज हम राइटिंग टास्क 1 की कुछ एग्जांपल्स और कीवर्ड्स देखेंगे। ठीक है, इसके अंदर हम लाइन ग्राफ, बार चार्ट, पाई चार्ट, टेबल और डायग्राम देखेंगे। ठीक है, तो वन बाय वन स्टार्ट करेंगे। अस्सलाम वालेकुम एंड वेलकम टू करंट ट्यूटोरियल्स। Okay, in this section we will discuss some examples and keywords of IELTS academic writing task 1. Writing task 1 normally includes on a line graph, bar chart, pie chart, table or a diagram. So let's start with the line graph. This is an example of line graph. Fantasian oil exports from 1960 to 2000. This is a line graph. So let's start with the introduction. This line graph shows the amount of oil exported from Fantasia in the period of 1960 to 2000. It is clear that there was overall rise in oil export from the country, although they begins to fall at the end of the period, because overall at the start of the period it was like 10 million barrels and at the end of the period it was 80 million barrels. So overall there was a rise in the period, but at the end you can check over here from 100 to 80. So we used it's clear that there was an overall rise in oil exports from this country, although they begins to fall towards the end of this period. Looking in detail, it can be observed that from 1960 to 1970 there was a slight rise in exports from 10 million to 20 million barrels. It's 10 million to 20 million. There was a slight rise in the export. From 1970 to 1980 there was a moderate rise. This is more than a slighter one. There was a moderate rise in exports to 40 million barrels. So here it's 45 million barrels. Then a dramatic rise to 100 million barrels in 1990. Then from here a dramatic rise to 100 million barrels. So we use three keywords over here. One is a slight rise. The next one is a moderate slight rise, and the next one is moderate increase. The next one is moderate increase. The other one is dramatic rise. From 1990 to 2000, however, exports fell moderately to 80 million barrels per year. So however, exports moderately fell down to 80 million barrels per year. Nevertheless, in 2000 the exports were still 8 times higher than they were at the start of the period. So the exports were 80 million barrels at the end of the period. At the start of the period these were 10 million barrels. So these are 8 times higher than at the start of the period. Another example. So in this line graph, margarine, low fat and reduced spread butter in the grams 1981 to 2070. How the margarine, I think it's good to, yeah, like this. Margarine, low fat and reduced spread butter in gram unit was measured in gram, and from 1981 to 2007. So the line graph illustrates the amount of three kinds of spread: margarine, low fat and reduced spread, and butter, which were consumed over 26 years from 1981 to 2007. The units were consumed in grams. The units are measured in grams. Overall, the consumption of margarine and butter were decreased over the period of time. Check out the butter. This is butter. It was like 140 grams, and at the end of the period it was like 50 grams. So it was reduced. And margarine, it was like 95, and at the end of the period here it's like as 40. The consumption of margarine and butter decreased over the period of time, while low fat and reduced spread, it rose. This is low fat and reduced. It started from 1960 from 10 grams, and at the end of the period it was like 70 grams. At the start of the period, butter was most popular. Which was at the start of the period, the butter was most popular, which was replaced by margarine from 1991 to 2001. So from butter was most popular at the start of the period. It was replaced by margarine from 1990 to 2001 here. And following that, low fat and reduced spread become most widely used in final years. Now check over here. The low fat and reduced spread, now they are more popular than everyone else. With regard to the amount of butter used, it began at 140 grams. And then peaked at 160 grams in 1986. The maximum utilization of butter was 160 gram, and it was 1986, before falling dramatically to about 50 grams in last years. It was falling dramatically, and it was about 50 gram in last years. Likewise, 90 gram of margarine was eaten in the first year. 90 gram was eaten in the first year, after which figure fluctuated. It means it goes down, it goes up. So fluctuation means whether neither it's decreased, neither it's increased. It will not follow the proper pattern. Fluctuated and slightly dropped to 80 grams in 2007. Here some fluctuations from here to right here, and slightly dropped to 40 grams in 2007. In 2007 it was 40 grams. On the other hand, the consumption of low fat and reduced fat only started in 1960 at about 10 grams. So reduced fat started at 10 grams. This figure reached at high of just 80 grams 5 years later. So 5 years later at 2001. So we have not used the word 2001. I used the 5 years later. It reached at the 70 grams. The figure reached 80 grams. So 80 grams 5 years later. and fell lightly to approximately 70 grams in 2000 and fell slightly to approximately 70. So that's all for the line graph. The next topic will be bar chart.